Hi, friend. We are back with a Zoom episode. This is considered one of our mini episodes. If you are listening, feel free to hop over to YouTube where you can see our faces and subscribe to our channel.
Absolutely. And I'm excited because it's been a minute since we've done this together.
Exactly. A lot of our mini episodes have been maybe just Margot sharing her perspective on something like our e-journal defining love at a big age, or me talking about how much of a hoe I am. There's a little mixture of all the things on our YouTube and our audio playlist.
Yeah, and we like mix in some social commentary, which kind of is the bread and butter of how we started. But today we're going back.
We are going back because I think, Margot, when a lot of people see us, they are inspired, to put it positively. Maybe some people are confused by the fact that we are seemingly so different, but we are best friends and we have been such for over a decade now. And I think what has allowed for us to hold each other so closely is the transparency and the vulnerability in our friendship. And so today's topic came from something that we saw over on TikTok that we thought, just as friends who were in a cross cultural relationship, we might be poised to have an opinion on, right?
Yeah, it also brings up something that happened over the last week too with our vice president that I'm sure people have some thoughts on as well.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I hadn't even made that connection yet. So let's
So
just,
when I was watching the TikToks yesterday, I kept thinking about that as well. So I'm referencing, I'm not like trying to hide the ball. I'm referencing Drew Barrymore asking Kamala Vice President Harris to be the country's mother.
she said, right now, we need you to be Mama Love. It was how she leaned in and was saying it so slow, like it was so profound, that also just really like this.
And people, it really upset a lot of people, understandably.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just say that I don't know the exact origin of it. So evidently it was a question that was posed that someone then took and put a twist on it. And what this person said was, we should ask Black women, would they rather, if they were sitting in a conference room, would they rather have a white man enter the conference room or a white woman enter the conference room? And I don't know this to be the origin or not, but when someone says conference room, I immediately think work. I think maybe job interview. I think of something maybe business or career related. And so I want to give that context that that was my bias when I heard it. And I immediately had a very like sound declarative answer, and it was a white man for sure. And the TikTok that I sent you was a white woman who does somatic healing responding and saying, instead of people getting upset about it, specifically white women, how can we take a posture of learning and understanding where this came from? But what did you think?
It just is so fascinating to me when people get so up in arms about something and comment on it. Because if it's something you don't agree with or it doesn't sit well with you, just move on. But the other part, and we were talking about this, is the just total lack of curiosity, right? So,
Mhm.
like the immediate jumping to being defensive that these white women were like, well, why? Like, we've never done anything to you. Like, we're good people. We're not racist. We're not, and this assumption that people were thinking the worst, as opposed to being curious as to why so many Black women had that reaction. That
Yes.
was my immediate reaction.
Yes, yes. And let me just say that we never proclaim to be able to speak for all of anything, right? I don't speak for all queer people, all Black people, all Black women, especially not all. I mean, Condoleezza Rice is somewhere minding her business, and I could never speak for her. I think I'm very different from who she is. Black people are not a monolith, okay? But I think there are
And
some.
nor are white people.
Exactly. No one is, no group of people, especially being that race is a social construct, are the same. But I do think there is something that I could say unequivocally, and I would feel comfortable speaking for my friend group, that we would have the same position and have it almost immediately. And so, speaking of curiosity, I thought to myself, but why is this? Where is that coming from? Because I don't have a white man outside of Josh who I adore, who I would say is a close friend. So what is that? And it is because I think, speaking for myself here, I have been, especially career-wise, being a teacher and then being in the nonprofit space. directly harmed by white women and their leveraging of white supremacy in a real way. And it has always made me think that when our back is up against the wall, who is going to choose gender and who is going to choose race? Because there's something about the privilege, I think, that will trump what it means for us both to be women in some ways.
It also makes me think or kind of inquire around how like the stereotype that women like are just so mean,
Mm,
and how we in general, like when we're making these assumptions, like we don't support each other, we don't push people up. Like people say, you know, I'd rather have a male boss than a female boss. I'd rather be in front of a male judge than a female judge. I'd rather have a male opposing counsel than a female opposing counsel. And so there could be a different question too. Shai, how would you answer the question? Like, would you rather be in a conference room with a Black woman or a Black man?
ooh, now this is good. Ooh, this is good. I'm gonna say a Black woman.
So I was assuming that. So it's not always, it's not, but um
It's not about the man. It's not, is what you're saying. Because if it was about the man, then I would have said a Black man versus a Black woman.
yeah, but
Yeah.
there's yes. So maybe it's just white women. I don't know, but um
No, no,
uh,
no. Can I respond to that quickly though?
yeah,
Because I haven't thought about this because I had like three reasons that I kind of distilled quickly as to why I felt that way. But one of them, Margot, is so effing problematic. It is that a, to your point, a white man likely does not see me as his competition. And when I think of the mentors that I've had that really put me in a position to excel in my career, they were both white men who were also older. And between the competition,
same, same.
so the competition thing is there, but also there is this kind of familiarity at times that I felt like I could just be myself and not have to pander or assimilate into certain norms, right? Because I am far from what we've been taught in this society, not in all ways, but in many ways, the docility, the submission, the need to kind of be quiet or to shrink myself. When I have to go in spaces and do that, I feel like so out of sorts, like a fish out of water. Meanwhile, my white women counterparts have been conditioned in that way, and in many ways I have not. And so I wonder if, in some ways, the being bold, the being loud as a bad thing is because I was maybe more socialized like a white man in that way. And it sometimes has felt like a rowy relationship that we can do. I don't even feel like I have to code switch as much sometimes when I'm around a white man versus a white woman, honestly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But there's something there. There's something about how women are socialized, particularly in the workplace
Hmm.
or in outside of the home, outside of social. And I mean, social life is like a whole other thing, but like how, how we're socialized to see other women as our competition as opposed to our allies.
Always, always. And we say this a lot, right? The ways in which we will advance the patriarchy for itself. And I think because once again, it's kind of where at times we butt heads around definitions of feminism based upon people's race and access to privilege. Because at some point it's going to be more comfortable to lean into the privilege than to lean into the part of your identity that is oppressed and marginalized.
And I think we also, and we've talked a lot about this, like there is obviously a difference between intent and impact.
Yeah.
And we don't have good training. And that's not as a way to defend people's bad behavior in the workplace, but we don't know how to sit in discomfort or to apologize or to hold people accountable, but in a safe way. We just, and so that's what when people start saying, oh, white silence, white tears, like, and that's where everyone gets all
Right, fragility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, going back to a workplace, yes, some of these things are just around a toxic workplace culture that Americans have. And then when you put race, when you put gender identity and expression and sexual orientation, then you put everything up and gender and on top of it, it just gets more and more complicated around who gets to sit at the table and who does not, quite frankly.
And also, like, here's the thing that just blows my mind, and I think this is what you were getting at, is it actually doesn't matter why people feel a certain way. If they feel that way, they feel it for a reason. And we have to figure out if that's not the result we want, how can we make it different? Screaming in people's comments that you're not racist isn't the way to do it. I mean, I don't think.
Well, you remember I gave this example. We were doing like a facilitation and a training with an organization. By the way, Margot and I are available to provide that support for your organizations. And I gave the example about one time being part of the equity team at my job. And I mean, I had been doing racial equity work for a very long time. And I remember it was a non-binary staff member who pointed out to me, you all should really stop using the term preferred pronouns. These are not my preferred pronouns. They are just my pronouns. And I didn't flip the table over and say, I'm not transphobic. I didn't do that. I didn't say, do you know what my people have been through? I didn't do that. I simply said, I did not know. I apologized and told that person, thank you for teaching me so that I could change my behavior in the future.
Absolutely. And in that same training, I used a word that was upsetting to someone in the training. And they gave me that feedback and I sat with it and understood where they were coming from. It was actually, I was just nervous, as I sometimes am, and and I said, thank you. You're right. That wasn't the right way to describe what I was trying to say. Thank you for that feedback.
You did a great job.
No, I mean, I think but it's like, right, because we're human, we make mistakes.
We make mistakes. And also, who knows everything, right? In a society that actually capitalizes, and using that term intentionally, on our kind of us being separated and on racial apartheid as well for so many decades. What do you expect? We're not going to know everything about the ways in which our counterparts see the world. All people are asking for is that we begin with a level of understanding that can lead to inclusivity. And if we can at least have a conversation, like where are we going to go from there?
And why people think that screaming at people's social media is going to change people's perspectives. Like, that's the other part that's just like, is that really a good use of anyone's time?
No, no, it's not. I mean, I'm grateful that the conversation could have been started, right? Because we wouldn't be having our conversation if it wasn't for
For
someone
sure.
talking about it on TikTok and it going viral. But I agree with you. We have to hold ourselves accountable for our triggers and our responses. And that's what the person was talking about that I sent to you. Again, not the original video, but that person who I think is a healer, their response was just like, where do you feel this in your body and how can you work to counteract that? Because you've been triggered and we have to explore why.
Yeah. And I think similar but different, a lot of people were triggered by Drew Barrymore asking Vice President Harris to be everyone's mom because of this thing that we do to Black women, particularly what white women do to Black women, right? And whether that was Drew Barrymore's intent or not, it doesn't actually matter.
You know what I thought initially? I was like, Drew Barrymore was a child actress, right? She spent her whole life in this very weird vortex of Hollywood. She just doesn't know that that is a stereotypical trope that goes back to the mammy stereotype, the happy-go-lucky enslaved woman who is there to do master's bidding, right? She doesn't know. But then I had to correct myself because I thought to myself, why am I apologizing for her? This is someone who has so much access. And just
And
because
it,
she knows doesn't mean she can't find out.
and what about all the produce? I mean, so it's like Drew Barrymore, but it's like that show is highly produced. Nothing is
No, that's the fact. The
uh
fact that
uh
they came out
it,
unedited. No, that's the fact, Margot. Damn, I hadn't even thought about that.
So it's not, and it doesn't matter. Like Drew Barrymore had a very isolated upbringing, but also has profited off of being super sensitive, super like hip, super with it.
Oh no,
But
I didn't know that. I don't know much
oh
about her
yeah,
shoulder these
like she's
days.
like the hip mom and like talks about menopause and like, you know, is in recovery. I mean, all of these things that are very powerful and and she's had like a very hard, child star life.
Yeah.
It
What has happened since then, friend? Did she like acknowledge the constructive feedback?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything.
Mm.
Also, there was a lot of shit about Drew Barrymore around the strike as well. And she kept her show going. So people felt strongly. She has been getting some constructive feedback,
About
I
how she
would
needs
say.
to. Yeah.
And so I would say again, this is obvious. I don't even say obviously. This perhaps is an intent versus impact thing. The impact was way worse than the intent. Staying curious. Why did so many people feel triggered by this? There's a reason. This is a trope. This is something that white people do to Black women. How can we change our behavior and not do this, especially to women in power, Black women in power?
But thank you, friend. You summed that up beautifully. And I also think to myself, as the vice president of the country, I don't care what race you are. I don't want you to call me into being the country's mother. I don't, because we don't
Would
say,
anyone ever do that to Joe fucking Biden
no one would ever say that to Joe Biden. Can you just be our papa now?
or
Can you?
Barack?
It actually makes me a little sick to think about how that would be perceived. No one would do that. And so why can't we just stand in power and that be that? I mean, this woman is akin to someone who had close to someone who has the keys, the nuclear codes. You know what I'm saying? Like the
And
Swift,
why can't we separate femininity from motherhood?
and she ain't got no kids.
Right. So there's that too. That's like, oh, well, you're not spending time mothering, so I'm just going to put the
The
burden of
burden
the
of,
country on you. Shut the fuck up.
but
That's stupid.
wasn't me, it wasn't just me, but it seemed like in that moment Kamala was so uncomfortable. Like she had
Yes,
that
because
glue
people
line.
comment on her lack of biological children all the time in a way that they would never for men.
Can I
Okay,
just
we have
say
to do a whole episode on that.
okay, and we're gonna wrap this one up. I just have to say something, and I didn't know that she was in recovery, but someone said something that I thought described Drew Barrymore's interview style so like on point. That she always talks like she's trying to beg her dealer for her next high, and she ran out of money. But and I thought to myself that is really how she's like leaning in and like speaking so.
That's not nice.
Okay, happy that we can end the episode on a lighter note, friend.
I will talk to you later.
Bye, guys. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and you are following us all across the internet. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Justice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justicepodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.